Scary story time. This story is called The Lime Tree, and this is written by Hilo Haule. The following true story avoids names and a lack of specific locational details for legal reasons. My wife and I moved to Hawaii in 2012, and during this time of the story we lived on the east side of the Big Island in a town called Volcano. It was only about a mile away from the famous Kilauea volcano, and the only continuously active one since the 1980s on the planet. We lived in a nice suburb and in a beautiful little cottage house behind the main one with a fantastic grounds full of flowers and fruit trees. The most notable tree and central to the story was a lime tree, very close to our front door then. We have lived with lime trees before, but this one was so aromatic and bore so much fruit that I thought it was almost miraculous until the first incident. You could see the tree from a window near the foot of our bed, and one evening after we basically shut down for the day and we were nestled into bed, I just sat up in the dark for a bit thinking about the day and what I had to tackle the next day. Basically decompressing. My wife was already asleep, and just when I began moving down to sleep, I heard a strange humming from outside. It was a human's voice. It sounded high-pitched like maybe a little boy or little girl. I thought maybe it was one of the grandkids or the older folks living in the front house, as they sometimes had them over. But are they out there in the complete dark, unattended? Didn't sound right. I sat up and looked out the window, feeling it was coming from the yard. In the near full moonlight, I saw what looked like a pitch black shadow, a silhouette of a small child standing right next to the lime tree. It really startled me because I couldn't really believe that someone would let their kid go roaming around the neighborhood so late, especially with all these houses having some kind of aggressive dogs in the yard. I got up and slipped out of the front door, calling out a soft, "Hello? Is somebody there?" So as not to scare a child. Coming around from the other side of the lime tree, the shadow kid was nowhere to be found. Weird. How could it disappear so completely in the 10 seconds it took me to get outside? I shrugged it off, thinking some young child was in for the punishment of the life when mom or dad got the wind. They were cavorting around the neighborhood in the dark. The next night, right as I was on the edge of sleep, it happened again. Humming, silhouette. I bolted outside this time, intent of lecturing some child on an ongoing prank. Like before, no one was there. This time, I ran around the other side of the house thinking I'd catch them. Nothing. I told my wife about this, and she assumed what I did was a misbehaving child, nothing more. It happened twice more, and the fourth time I quickly snapped to the lanai light on and very briefly saw detail on them for the first time. Small Hawaiian wahine, keiki, girl child, with a long black hair and a dress in something that looked like a white pajama. The light freaked her out, and I saw her eyes got wide open right before, and I still can't believe this. She disappeared in the wink of an eye. I mean, it just instantly vanished. Running outside again, and I saw there was no way that this little kid could have run into the forest, which was a large yard away in that time. My wife was up already, running outside to see what was up. I was sitting on a deck chair and shaking. I'm sure my face was white. I told her simply, "She just vanished into thin air." My wife kind of reached right into my normally very skeptical thoughts and said what I was thinking. "My dear, you just saw a ghost." I couldn't accept this. Our life in Hawaii up at that time was so happy, so idyllic, that I couldn't grapple with the shades of the moonlight night. No more apparitions over the next week, but a new thing that felt worse. That amazing lime tree changed. Now it was emitting the most foul stench you could ever imagine. At first I thought an animal died at the base. Nope. Then I thought maybe a bird died somewhere in the thick branches. Again, nothing. Just that terrible smell. It also stopped yielding fruit, which was the most upsetting to me. I can be a bit OCD on some things, but this was one. Even though I had no more apparitions, the smell was there, and I could not shake the idea that something was very, very wrong here. More sinister. On a lark, I started to reach out to the closest thing to a local historian we had, a nice old lady who'd been living there for 40 years, asking about any recent missing children. She said she heard rumors when she was younger about a little girl gone missing from the neighborhood, but it was murky, with a scant fact that she couldn't vouch for any of it. Frustrated, I went to a local law enforcement and got the desk clerk to clear my story. She was not happy with her time being taken up by this and tried to blow me off. I persisted. She rolled her eyes and sent me to the precinct sergeant. He listened to me from the beginning to the end, thought a minute, and said the only thing that came to mind was an open case of a missing child in the area, but from the 1960s. It happened long ago before his job was there. The good part is that he actually worked with the psychics before on police business when he was in Honolulu and was willing to have a detective come by and take my statement. He would also do a search around the area looking for anything that he might yield a clue. He apologetically said that about the extent of what he could do. 2 days later, the detective showed up and I showed him our place and in particular the tree around which all the activities seemed to focus. Here is what's weirder than ever, he said. Didn't you say this tree smells awful like a dead animal? I was aghast. I was like, yeah, can't you smell that? He got close, then looked at me with a big smirk and said, smells like a lime tree to me. Mark that. Only I could smell this. I thought I might have lost my mind. Anyways, he was polite about it, gave me his card and said to him, if I need anything, call him if anything worse happens. Now I was angry. I felt like something was messing with my psyche and interfering with my life. I sat fumed about it for a week or so. Then one day, our next door neighbor's young and bouncy Akita dog got out and was running around our backyard. I liked the dog, but the neighbor said to come get him if the dog ever got out, so they could put him back and in the pent-up yard. So here I am running around trying to get the dog under control, and he makes a beeline for the lime tree. Stops dead and starts barking like crazy, like threatened barking. Along with the yelps and shrieks that he alarmed me, he was going nuts. Neighbor finally comes over, apologizes, and drags the poor dog home while I'm thinking, I finally have this thing treed. I digged the branches looking for a dead bird, mouse, or something that was there. Nothing. Just a horrid smell, but that dog was onto something. I went right back to the detective and begged him to look into it. Like digging up the place and looking into it. The landlord was involved by now, and when he got his blessings to sign the search warrant for the property, and he didn't want that kind of trouble on his properties. A group of 4 HPD workers showed up with shovels and went to it. About 2 feet from the tree and not all far underground, one of them hit something rotting burlap. They all stopped and went to carefully work on unearthing what looked like a sack. It began pulling apart easily, and there I saw it. A small human femur bone along with some other bones in the wasting bag. I almost passed out, fainted, and I felt like I was going to throw up. They quickly took the remains away, and the detective questioned us for about an hour. He quickly cleared us and thanked us for our cooperation. And they were very cool and professional about the whole thing, and I was really anxious for days and finally landed a call to the detective about any forensic results. More horror. It was indeed a small girl approximate age of 6 to 8 years old. Bones showed signs of violence which made it a homicide investigation. There were some teeth, but not hopeful because she had no dental records, as the alleged crime happened just a few years after Hawaii's statehood, and in this part of the island, access to dental care was rarely had. They didn't have enough evidence to decisively call it a homicide, and they had zero evidence to identify it and track down a killer. It was marked closed, but inconclusive. We moved away 2 months later, and I think about this almost daily, and dearly hope that little girl's family was able to get her a decent burial, and that they found some closure somehow. I never got my taste for key lime pie back.